Welcome back to my podcast, Love and Courageous. I'm your host, Demetris, and today I will be finishing up part 2 for the maternal mortality rate in Black women. So, Black women are 4 times more likely to die during labor than white women, even though they are both having the same symptoms. So in the documentary Aftershock, they decided to study the maternal mortality rate in Black women because of a journalist that decided to start telling other people's stories that were dying after giving birth in 2018. After hearing the stories, it actually persuaded the federal government to start tracking down the maternal mortality rate more systematically. In 2018, that was actually the first time that mortality rate was actually starting being tracked. In the documentary, Neil Shaw, the professor of obstetrics and gynecology, Harvard School of Medicine, was actually talking about the C-section rates. In the 1970s, the C-section rates was really low. But over time, they actually started doing more C-sections, and this actually increased 500% more. As the C-section rates increased, so did the mortality rates. By 2019, the overall mortality rate was only 20.1. That is including all races. Now, the mortality rate for Black women, the rate was 44. And women are 3 times more likely to actually have surgical complications, such as infections, organ injury, or a hemorrhage when they have a C-section versus a vaginal delivery. And Black women are most likely to have C-sections. And Neil Shaw was actually talking about how they created algorithms where they actually combined racism and race together in medicine, while using a calculator to help someone understand the odds of having a successful vaginal delivery. Versus when they are Black, the odds are actually dropped. White women have a 82.22% successful vaginal delivery versus Black women, they have a 70.27% of a successful vaginal delivery. So the calculator, what's actually doing is that it's limiting the amount of support, the treatment, and the care that these people are actually receiving. And if you are Black, you are less likely to have that support. So it has nothing to do with who the patients are and their biology. It has nothing to do with that. Now in the documentary, there's actually a woman named Helen Grant. She went to Georgetown University and have a bachelor's of science in nursing and a master's in midwifery education. She is the one that really went into depth about the systematic racism and basically how this got built into the healthcare. Now, only 6 to 9% of all births in the U.S. are by midwives. In Europe, midwives was actually put into the women's healthcare, and they are actually doing better than the U.S. The maternal mortality rate in the U.S. is higher than the maternal mortality rate in France, the UK, Sweden, and Germany. The U.S. actually has the highest rate of all industrialized nations. The maternal mortality rate national average has actually doubled, and it's actually because of the state Oklahoma and Tulsa. There is actually a rank for every state maternal mortality rate, and Oklahoma is actually in the bottom 5. Oklahoma, Tulsa actually has the highest rates of injury during childbirth. And the reason why this is because a lot of people of color lives there, and they actually have a very high C-section rate as well. In the documentary, they actually starts talking about the cost difference between a C-section, and a vaginal delivery. A C-section actually costs less than a vaginal delivery. And it's because a C-section only takes like 45 minutes, while a vaginal delivery can take up to 8 to 12 hours. The shorter the labor, the less it will cost. And also, they were talking about this in the documentary where they were speaking on the insurance reimbursements. So if a hospital do a C-section, they actually get paid about 50% more than when they actually do a vaginal delivery. And Neil Shaw said that you can imagine what kind of incentives that might set up. And in the documentary, they actually was interviewing a woman. Her name is Felicia Ellis. And she was saying how black women actually represent up to 10% of births in Oklahoma, Tulsa. But black women are also 20% of the deaths. And her husband, Paul Ellis, actually said that Tulsa, Oklahoma is one of the worst places in the U.S. to actually have a baby. But Felicia said that she did not know that. And Felicia was actually speaking on her experience in the hospitals and actually, making appointments. And she was saying that they are very quick with it, just trying to hurry up and get her out of there. And they are not intimate. And she was saying that it's hard to build a trust and to find someone that she is actually comfortable with. And Helen Grant even said this in the documentary that she have noticed that black women are actually used as guinea pigs in the hospital system, and how if you are white and you have private insurance, then you have a private physician who's on call for you. And saying that in the clinic population tends to be more black women who are on Medicaid and are treated by resident learners. And Helen Grant actually said that she's actually at a place that she is working at right now that practice on people. And black women were actually experimented on to basically better the profession of gynecology. The U.S. had a population of enslaved people that they can do whatever they wanted to, whenever they wanted to, and how they basically wanted to do it. A woman, her worth is basically about what her womb can produce for the slave master plantation. Black women were having so many kids and they actually end up getting fistulas. Just in case anybody don't know what a fistula is, it is a abnormal connection between organs, and there's different kinds of them too. There's a anal fistula where it's an infected tunnel between the skin and the anus, and there's also a obstetric one where it's a abnormal connection between the rectum and the vagina, and you can actually get a fistula through trauma or surgery. And Helen Grant actually started speaking on Enter J. Merriam Sams, the supposedly father of gynecology, when black women were actually having all these issues. He said that he is going to be the one to supposedly figure it out and how to fix it. But the only reason why he was really fixing it is so that she can go back and have more children. Black women were seen as a product, so she can basically continue to be useful to her slave master. And Enter J. Merriam Sounds were actually cutting these black women open, and there are actually modules written about these things and what was done to them. And it was actually written that the black women wasn't feeling pain. And there was actually a part that was written, and it said what would be the cause of a insupportable pain to a white man that a Negro would almost disregard. The sad thing about it is that he said that the black women don't feel pain, but that's actually a lie because when he was cutting these women open, they were actually screaming. Sadly, this is how the U.S. actually gained power when it comes to OBGYN surgery. Helen Grant was saying that the reason why the maternal mortality rate is so high is because of the over medicalization with inexperience. Midwives actually exist in all nations and cultures on earth. And midwives actually knew the feminine secrets, and they were actually abortion practitioners since the beginning of time. They were helping women control the use of their wombs and also control their fertility. And that is power. But a lot of men don't like it when women have power. So in Europe, in the Catholic Church, the men decided they wanted to control the childbearing of women and their choices. And so the church actually decided that men should be a part of childbirth, where the men actually becomes the male midwife and then later on proceeds to become the OBGYN provider. And the priests were actually hearing these reports that women were screaming and they were starting to become animalistic and they were starting to become something else when they were in childbirth that has not ever been seen before by men, supposedly. Now, in the U.S. during slavery, midwives were all on the plantations, not just caring for the enslaved black people, but they're caring for everyone. When the white women were having babies, they were being attended by black midwives. Now, after slavery, midwives was still a big thing, but the powerful white men that is now called a OBGYN physician decided that we are going to consider that you should give birth, but in the hospital now. And what ended up actually happening was that the white male physicians and the white public health nurses actually came together and created a lot of marketing campaigns saying that black midwives are dirty and they unskilled and untrained. And the white public health nurses will actually go around to try and find where the midwives were located. And there's actually a newspaper article about this, and the title was Hunted Midwife to be Prosecuted and Separate Case on Charge of Illegal Operation. And they were actually forcing these midwives to go to the health departments and turn in their license. They also were threatening them and said that if you catch another baby, I'll report you and you will go to jail. And midwifery becomes a book knowledge profession. And it was actually in the newspaper article, a black woman named Melissa Harris. She was a midwife of Rocky Mount, and she actually was arrested and was in Nash County Jail. Had to pay $1,000 bond. So in the documentary, it was really breaking it down on the steps you had to take when it comes to education to basically become licensed. And you had to become a nurse. And then you had to take on the extra training to work in this little agreement that was made with the doctor. And it wasn't a profession that you can grow into through a apprenticeship anymore. So what happened was that white women actually took over in this profession. And 87% of midwives are white. And it just shows, like how important really midwives are in the healthcare, because midwives care for black women because it was done well, and it was also anti-traumatic care. It was a way to reconstruct the narrative that childbirth does not have to be this process that comes with the abuse. So, in the Bronx, New York, Amber Rose Isaac partner Bruce, and also Shamani mother, and a few other people decided to create a birthing center. And just to let anyone know, a birthing center is where it's specialized in childbirth, and it's less restrictive and it's more home like than the hospital. Now, I'm basically going to give my opinion on all this, to be honest, and I'm very upset and just disgusted with the system, and also with Enter J. Miriam Sams to stand there and to lie on black women to say that we wasn't feeling pain when we really do. That is the issue when it comes to the healthcare. When we as black people are saying, hey, I'm hurt and all this, this is why they're ignoring us, because of him. He lied. And I'm like, okay, see, I have an issue with that, because the simple fact, these women were actually screaming. So why was he lying and saying that they wasn't feeling pain? I'm not understanding that. Why in the world did he lie about that? And another thing that is so sad, because they saw a way of making money basically off of midwives. And so they decided to come up with all this little ideas that, oh, well, you should now give birth in the hospitals. And it's so funny when they decided to do that, then they want to take away black people's license and say, well, you can't do this anymore. It was a way of kicking black people out. Like, they didn't want us to make money off of it. And it's also sad because it just shows how corrupt the system really is, and the fact that they actually are doing C-sections more on black women, and the fact that they are actually getting more money back at the hospitals for doing C-sections on us. So I feel like it's disgusting for them to even do that. They're making money off of us, is what they're doing. And they can care less about the simple fact that we die, because they get their money. And I'll be honest, when I was watching the documentary, I was getting so emotional about the fact of how Shamani Gibson and Amber Rose Isaac and all the other women out there, how they were mistreated in the hospitals. And also, especially when they went into depth of how this healthcare system became so corrupt. Honestly, I was about to tear up a lot of times, because it's like, it was just so disgusting on how they treated black women. You can really, it really just shows how they look at black women, because they literally was practicing on us because it was a benefit for them. They were practicing on us so they can become a OBGYN, and it's disgusting. They use black women, they use our bodies, regardless of the fact that we were in pain or whether we pass away from this. It didn't matter. It's just pure disgusting. Like, I was really just getting emotional over the whole thing, and was just disgusted inside that they saw us as a check. Honestly, it was just pure disgusting and just evil when I was seeing some of the clips, and they had some of the white men putting their hands down there, and feeling on those black women. It was just disgusting. Like, y'all not doing it because y'all care. But I really hope that people watch this documentary and educate themselves on why the maternal mortality rate is so high in black women. It has nothing to do with our bodies. It has nothing to do with obesity or poverty. It's the simple fact that these people in these healthcares, they don't care. They racially profile us and think that we don't feel pain. Which I don't know why in the world some people literally think that. Like, well, I just learned that it was because of stupid little bias into J. Marion Sam's. That's why. But to me, it's just common sense. Like, you know good well everybody feels pain. Why does every other race feel pain but a black person don't? It don't make sense. It's like when we're babies. You know how babies cry when they hurt themselves? Okay, that's a prime example. We feel pain. So I'm really not understanding why in the world would people even believe that stereotype. It's like some of the most dumbest stereotypes out there that people really do believe. And it's just crazy to me. But I just want everybody to just please educate yourself when it comes to the maternal mortality rate and women of color. And just stop being biased. Like, before you be biased, at least try to educate yourself. We all have access to education or just, knowledge somehow. So please use it. But I want everybody to please remember these women names because their lives does matter. They are important. And they weren't women with baby daddies. They were women that had dreams and they were in relationships, whether it was a boyfriend or a husband. They had somebody and they wanted to grow a family. Or if they already had a family, they was going to add another one. And so I want people to remember these names: Shamani Gibson, Amber Rose Isaac, Kyra Johnson, Maria Corona, Shaaja Simple, and all the other women out there that have lost their lives. So please educate yourselves and please watch the documentary Aftershock. It is on Hulu. And I just want to say thank you all for tuning in to listen to my podcast. And that is all for today. I hope you all have a lovely day.